I can't get too fucked up tonight, man. I got some shit I gotta do overnight tomorrow. Plus, fucking Polak, we got working for us, man. I gotta pull his coat. If he had anything to do with that Clay Davis bullshit, man, I'm gonna have to cut his money, little faggot.
Time y'all meeting?
What time? 12? I think, what? You need me to do something for you?
I'm just seeing where you're gonna be at.
In the series Bible of the Wire, David Simon describes the relationship between the Baltimore PD and Barksdale organisation as beyond the typical us against them heroics of the PD Blue, describing Barksdale's people as a morally grey set of individuals with their own strict set of rules and morals, introducing characters like Avon and Weebay as authority figures strictly abiding by said rules, despite also being what some may refer to as ruthless criminals. And this is how the majority of the criminal world operates for the first 3 seasons of the show, as take for example murder, which is the majority of the time only ever committed to in some way protect the Barksdale organisation, hence the constant comeuppance of the line, "It's just business," being uttered whenever an individual is murdered, acting as a justification for the murder of innocent people like Gant, and also a reason for us as an audience to still sympathise with these clearly ruthless criminals, seeing as though their actions are never driven by malice, but rather the need to protect all that they've been working towards. However, this set of rules isn't always followed by Stringer Bell, seeing as though he's one of the only characters early on in the show to have committed murders which were brought on by personal afflictions, such as the murder of D'Angelo and the senseless torture of Brandon. However, despite this seemingly short-sightedness, everybody was still under the assumption that no matter how bad things may get with Avon down the line, there's no way in hell Stringer will betray his best friend of 30 or so years, as in the world of The Wire, the phrase "no honour amongst thieves" is surprisingly a saying that isn't applicable to many of the criminals on this show, especially those as close-knit as Avon and Stringer. Now, me saying that Avon and Stringer's final scene together is a moment where the Barksdale era came to an end is by no means a take you lot probably haven't heard over 1,000 times before, because it is. However, a point which I've never came across anybody mentioning is that this scene also signifies the ending to the set of rules that all of the criminals under Avon's banner followed, and in turn the majority of the criminals in Baltimore, which is as mentioned prior, business trumps all, and only ever should you take a life if it were for the benefit or protection of said business, despite how you may feel personally about whatever decision it is you have to make, such as Bodie and Poot being forced to kill their lifelong friend in Wallace, simply for the betterment of business. Now, whilst one may make the argument that Avon also betrayed Stringer, therefore he too should be held responsible for what I'm about to cover in a minute, Avon did what he did not only to protect his business, but also out of respect for the laws of the game, despite how it affected him personally, which in comparison to Stringer Bell, who mainly only betrayed Avon because he got his feelings hurt regarding the whole situation with Clay Davis, is a far more justifiable reason, and therefore Avon isn't to be blamed as such for allowing the show's most evil character to take over, in Marlo Stanfield.
You want it to be one way. What? You want it to be one way.
Man, I don't
You want
know
it
what
to be
you...
one
Man,
way.
stop!
Stop saying that. But it's the other way.
Now, before I delve into why Marlo taking over Baltimore is a dark turning point of the show, I want to quickly make a comparison between the introductions of the 2 West Side Kingpins, with Avon first appearing in the pilot episode of the show, lecturing D'Angelo on the negatives of catching a murder charge, which in my eyes is a perfect introduction and insight into the character of Avon Barksdale, who explains to D'Angelo that he'd rather him take a beating, potentially souring the reputation of the Barksdale name, than rid an innocent man from this world, especially if it meant it was bad for business, implying that Avon isn't a character who takes murder lightly, but one who would rather weigh all of the possible pros and cons before snatching a human life. However, Marlo is introduced with a totally different stance on the murder of an innocent human, giving one of his soldiers the go-ahead to take out Bubbles, despite him only slightly damaging the man's car on accident, implying 2 things in regards to Marlo's take on murder, one being his sloppiness and lack of regard for the police, seeing as though this murder would have taken place right outside of Marlo's house, and 2 being his completely emotionless response to the crime, as Marlo would have gladly taken Bubbles from this world, if it meant he would have no longer been an inconvenience in the way of Marlo getting to wherever he needs to be. A complete contrast to the former and far more humane kingpin of Baltimore. And this whole stance on criminals just feeling like they have free reign to kill whoever they please really starts to come into play once Avon and Stringer are no longer in the picture, as now criminals are just killing whoever they feel like killing, despite the potential repercussions it might have on their business. Also the primary reason as to why the city's murder rate skyrockets in the show's 4th season. Now for those who may want to argue that Marlo isn't to blame for the actions of other criminals, and argue that this is actually just a part of the game evolving, you may be right. However, because of Marlo's influence over the criminal world, the streets have now evolved to a point where murdering whoever you please, regardless of whether or not it's because of business or your fragile ego, is now just the norm. And unfortunately for the city of Baltimore, rarely ever will the laws of anything, streets or politics, revert back to what they once were. And what better way to highlight this change than compare how the criminals in seasons 1 through 3 dealt with certain issues, and how the criminals in seasons 4 and 5 dealt with those same issues.
What the fuck? The boy was foul, clear, straight up. How you gonna not call that?
Look, if you want, I can put time back on the clock and replay it.
You talking about a do-over, baby? Are you talking about a fucking do-over? That's not how the game is played. You can't do that. Fuck, believe this shit, nigga. Talking about doing it again.
Look, I don't want any trouble, okay?
Ain't gonna be no trouble over no ball.
Man, you supposed to be the ref, right? Why don't you stand up for your fucking self, you pussy? You can't just let any old motherfucking nigga get in your face. You understand?
Now the referee in this scene, just doing his job, makes a decision which Avon doesn't quite agree with. Therefore Avon confronts the referee, who immediately backs down and offers to break the rules of the game, to which Avon takes offence to, as this man is supposed to be the one who enforces the rules, and when stuck in a difficult situation, instantly attempts to change or break them, which is in direct contrast to how Avon would react in a similar situation. However, instead of threatening this man, Avon actually encourages the ref to stand up for himself, and stand by the decision he's made, regardless of the calibre of man who gets in his face. As at this point in the show, if one would stand up against a kingpin like Avon, and confront them on a decision they believe to be right or wrong, Avon wouldn't inflict any harm onto them, as despite him not agreeing with your decision, he can at least respect the fact that you stood by it once confronted.
$1.
Now Marlo in this scene actually baits the security guard into doing his job, and in turn confronting Marlo, who's under the impression that because of how high up he is in the criminal world, and the fear his name carries, the rules of the real world therefore don't apply to him. And the reason Marlo does this is the same reason he gets so mad when told about Omar running his mouth in the street, as Marlo isn't a character who rules with respect, but rather fear, and constantly needs said fear to be validated, because the second people aren't afraid of him, the weak foundations he's used to build his mighty castle will all come tumbling down. And I love the little moment of acting from the security guard as he grapples with pursuing Marlo, deciding between being a man of his word or a coward, an act which if the roles were reversed and the security guard confronted Avon instead of Marlo, he would have arguably been given props and definitely wouldn't have been killed. Now another quick point I want to mention, in regards to the quote that Marlo says to the guard about him wanting it to be one way, yet being the other way, is a really good way of describing what once was, and is now no longer, as the quote implies that we live in a world where we want the heroes to prevail, and the bad guys to face the consequences of their actions. But in reality, it's the total opposite. The heroes don't succeed in this world, and the bad guys walk away without punishment, which actually wasn't the case at the beginning of the show, as the goal of our heroes was to ultimately put an end to Avon and Stringer, which despite not ending quite how they'd liked, was nevertheless achieved. However, when after Marlo, the heroes are punished because of the immoral methods they undertake in an attempt to catch him, whilst the show's most ruthless criminal gets to walk away scot-free, really emphasising just how corrupt and dark the world of The Wire becomes once Marlo Stanfield takes over.
Motherfucker be killing niggas just to do it. You see? Nigga kill motherfuckers just cause he can. Not cause they snitching. Not cause it's business. But cause this shit just come natural. Yo, Bodie, man. Man, Lil Kevin is gone. This nigga don't feel nothing. And all them motherfuckers in them row houses, nobody mean a fucking thing to him. I think you need to calm the fuck down. Fuck Marlo, man. Fuck him. And anybody that think it's all right to do people this way. You hear me? Fuck all y'all motherfuckers. Fuck off me, man.